Welcome back to the Football Regulatory Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Werners, founder of Pitchside Sports Consulting, which is CONCACAF's only football-specific firm. Today's episode builds directly on the foundation we laid in episode 1, where we introduced the FIFA Football Tribunal as the enforcement backbone of football's regulatory system. This week, we're going a little bit deeper, examining the Football Tribunal from a practical point of view, unpacking why Canada continues to lag behind global standards, and exploring why 31 Caribbean nations remain completely absent from FIFA's regulatory system. From our position working within Canada and the Caribbean, the message is increasingly clear. Football law is not isolated to Europe alone. It is a global necessity, and our region has some serious catching up to do. So, let's start with the big question of the day. What is the FIFA Football Tribunal? The Football Tribunal, established under Article 54 of the FIFA statutes, acts as FIFA's global enforcement mechanism. It applies FIFA's regulations, protects contractual stability, and ensures consistency across the game worldwide. The tribunal is divided into 3 chambers. The first chamber is the Dispute Resolution Chamber, or the DRC. Competence for this chamber is found under Article 22B and C of the FIFA Regulation on the Status and Transfer of Players. It hears disputes between players and clubs relating to employment contracts with an international dimension, meaning club from one country and player from another country. It decides cases concerning international transfer certificates, or ITCs, compensation for breach of contract, and training compensation claims. The second chamber is the Player Status Chamber. Jurisdiction for this chamber is found under Articles 22A, D, E, and Article 23 of the FIFA RSTP. It adjudicates disputes between clubs and coaches in contracts with an international dimension as well. In this chamber, disputes between clubs from different associations and broader regulatory issues like player eligibility and transfer status are decided. The third chamber, introduced under the FIFA Football Agents Regulations in 2023, is the Agents Chamber. Jurisdiction for this chamber is found in Article 20 of the FIFA Football Agents Regulations. This chamber was designed to resolve disputes between licensed FIFA agents and their clients, which are either clubs or players. However, its operations have been suspended since December of 2023 due to ongoing litigation around the FIFA Football Agents Regulations in multiple jurisdictions. The suspension leaves agent-regulated disputes in a governance void, with enforcement fragmented across courts and arbitral panels. For regions like CONCACAF, where unlicensed or informal agent activity is already systemically widespread, this creates both risk and urgency to understand the situation. All 3 chambers mentioned above are governed by the procedural rules for the FIFA Football Tribunal. These rules set out the applicable law, admissibility standards, timelines, and enforcement. Non-compliance with tribunal decisions, such as football jurisprudence, can result in serious sanctions. For example, transfer bans, registration freezes for clubs, point deductions, and sometimes even relegations. This isn't just arbitration. This is what we call governance, sports governance, codified, enforceable, and global sports governance. The tribunal, according to last year's Football Tribunal report, processed close to 20,000 disputes annually and globally. In Q2 of this year, more than 110 FIFA decisions were appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The regional breakdown in this is striking. Of course, Europe with UEFA accounts for 65 to 70% of the entire caseload. South America with CONMEBOL contributes 15 to 20%, which is notable with its 10 member associations. Africa, the Confederation of African Football, is growing with 10% of the cases. However, here in CONCACAF, less than 5%. All of those cases, 3 specifically, 2 of which coming from Mexico and 1 coming from the United States. This means Canada, Central America, the Caribbean, and the Guyanas, no contribution to the FIFA Football Tribunal's dispute resolution process. At Pitchlight Sports Consulting, we describe this as a threefold gap. First, the legal gap. Disputes are not being filed by clubs, players, agents within the region. The second issue is the economic gap. Less than 3% of the $500 million in solidarity and training compensation reaches the CONCACAF region. The last gap is the capacity gap. No dispute resolution chambers, no legal pipelines, and no specialist football regulatory experts. And here's the critical point. The silence is not because FIFA law doesn't apply here. It doesn't exist. In fact, every FIFA member association, including those in CONCACAF, has constitutional articles recognizing FIFA's regulatory system, its decisions, and its jurisprudence. By statute, associations are bound to respect these rules. The absence of disputes is not a matter of recognition. It's a matter of implementation. So, for you to understand, this is why Canada lags behind. Globally, mature systems use specialized football mechanisms. The Court of Arbitration for Sport maintains a football list of arbitrators trained specifically in football law. FIFA Circular 1010 and now the revised NDRC recognition principles require national associations to establish compliant dispute resolution chambers. In this context, Canada has neither. The Sports Dispute Resolution Center of Canada Code, enacted in April of 2025, created panels for doping and safeguarding, but nothing for football. Canada Soccer has not filled the gap either. Law societies within Canada don't recognize sports law as a specialty. All compounded together, this is why there are 0 FIFA Football Tribunal cases coming from the region. It's not because there are a lack of disputes. It's because there's an institutional capacity. Disputes are pushed abroad at higher costs. Players and clubs forfeit entitlements under FIFA's training compensation and solidarity mechanisms. Agents go unlicensed, and Canada's credibility as an international football governance actor remains undeveloped. Now, within the Caribbean Football Union, there's a similar void that must be worth discussion. In the Caribbean Football Union, there are 31 member associations, more than 90% of CONCACAF's geographical footprint. Yet not a single case has reached FIFA's Football Tribunal or the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Again, this isn't because disputes don't exist. They don't disappear within the Bermuda Triangle. Clubs routinely deal with unpaid wages, wrongful terminations, and blocked transfers. This issue is structural incapacity. Not a single CFU member operates FIFA-compliant NDRC. This leaves disputes to be handled informally or left unresolved. Players are excluded from FIFA's enforcement network, and clubs miss out on millions in training compensation. Globally, other regions show what's possible. France, Belgium, Spain, all within Europe, operate NDRCs. But if that's not enough, within CONMEBOL, it requires that certain clubs integrate dispute resolution processes into their club licensing. Even within Africa and the Asian Football Confederation, they make sure to integrate dispute resolution process within their club licensing. So the Caribbean cannot afford to remain outside this system. The absence is purely institutional, and it is costing the region both legally and economically. At Pitchlight Sports Consulting, we developed a plan to close these gaps mentioned previously. First, establish FIFA-compliant national dispute resolution chambers in strategic Caribbean hubs. One prominent example, obviously, being the Jamaica Premier League, being the league for the Caribbean. It is worth considering them to have a dispute resolution chamber for players to be recognized and have their disputes resolved. The second is train adjudicators in the Court of Arbitration for Sport and FIFA standards. with interest from institutions like the British Virgin Islands International Arbitration Association, it's clear that not only is there a value, but there's an interest to explore opportunities in this field. Recover unclaimed solidarity and training compensation via the FIFA clearinghouse. Now worth 500 million US dollars. It is worth now considering how we can integrate the Caribbean region into this system. And lastly, building regulatory literacy for executives, players, agents, and stakeholders to ensure a better level of compliance. Pitchside Sports Consulting continues to be the only firm positioned in CONCACAF to deliver this reform because our work spans FIFA, CAS, and the domestic realities of our region. You may be wondering why all of this matters. Well, globally, football law is enforced with consistency. This is why we talk of the concept of football jurisprudence. CONCACAF's associations already bound by statute must respect FIFA's regulatory system. Yet, from a practical standpoint, we remain invisible. The suspension of the agents chamber has only amplified this risk. With no functioning global chamber for agent disputes, regions like ours are exposed to unlicensed agent activity, poor governance, conflicts of interest, and loss of credibility. And the results show this is not a talent problem. It's a legal literacy problem. It's a compliance problem. And overall, it's a capacity problem. And from our point of view, unless these issues are addressed, CONCACAF will continue to forfeit rights, revenue, and influence in the global game. So, in closing, the Football Tribunal is not optional. It is the legal backbone of global football enforcement. And our associations within the Caribbean and within Canada are already committed by their own statutes to respect this framework. The question is not whether football law applies within our region, because it already does. The question is whether our region is ready to engage with it and align with global standards. At Pitchside Sports Consulting, we exist to bridge this gap, legally, economically, and institutionally. We are working with players, clubs, federations, and associations across Canada, Central America, and the Caribbean to bridge our region into the fold of football's global governance system. Because football law is codified, it is enforced, and it continues to evolve. The only question is, will CONCACAF continue to keep pace, or will it be left behind? In closing, I'm Andrew Werners, and this has been the Football Regulatory Podcast, Episode 2. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for Episode 3 in a few weeks.